Thank you, holy and mighty and merciful Lord. Your people assembled under your name. We come before you with stone hearts in our chests. And we pray and we ask that you rip out those hearts of stone and place the flesh one in its place. We have no words, Lord, to thank you and to praise you for all the blessings that you bestow on us. But we feebly attempt to do so, and we give you thanks and praise, Lord. Thank you for always providing. We ask that you give us your holy presence, Lord, and that of your Holy Spirit. And we pray in your holy and mighty name, in the name of Yeshua, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, you can see the slideshow, right? Yeah, you guys can. I can see it over there. Okay. External and internal line. Something we were discussing during the break is what to do after we finish these. And I want to open it up for all. I was telling them that I just was really determined to have all those Brazil classes, and I really wanted the Guadalupe ones as well to put in my binder that I've been putting all the notes in so that I have the message all together. So, but going forward, we're discussing what to do between, what's after Guadalupe, and also with the parable study, that the parable study doesn't always have to be parables, but what a couple of things were proposed. One was Elijah, the story of Elijah in 2 Kings chapter 1, where you have the story where the 50 bands come and they're destroyed. The next 50 comes, and then the third 50, and
they humble themselves.
They humble themselves,
and they get saved.
So that can be definitely a study going forward. But also the thing that was on my mind last night and this morning is that we start focusing on World War I and the counterfeit. And so if anybody has any thoughts that they want to add, feel free to send them in the chat or email us. And but I also want to open up the studies on Sabbath to be, because it'd be nice if I don't do one every week going forward, but I know that we're putting that out there for everybody to, because we're going to work on next Wednesday night, the schedule for trying to get everybody to fill in slots. I've got 2 people on that have sent their times in that they want to present and what they want to present. So we want to try to maybe take the Sabbath to the main one, at least, be geared towards after we get through Guadalupe, start working on, or an in the afternoon study, working on World War I, better understanding of World War I, World War I and World War II, the Third and Fourth Diadochi War, as well as the counterfeit, so that we'll have a good understanding of what is about to happen. So I know that the World War I is a weakness of mine. And just another note too, I'll send out the email. He did actually give me permission to share it, but one of the guys in Brazil, you guys have been talking to him, I think, Brother Heber.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he shared it with you guys already or not, I don't know, but they developed some flashcards on this particular app that you can use, and you can have the app on your computer or on your phone.
That's pretty interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Give our message to learn this stuff?
Yeah. So they're flashcards that you get to, whether or not you have the answer or not, and you proceed, or you have that one come back up again and again and again. So I'll email that out then as well.
That's pretty cool. Whoever came up with that.
From what I heard, it sounded like he said they were still not quite finished with it, or maybe they're just adding to it. I don't know. But he sent me
Of our whole message?
He sent me 4 sets of flashcards. So
There's 4 sets.
Sent you in JPEG or like the app? What do you mean? Sent you how? Which
it was a
one?
link, and I had to go to and download the app, download the files, the flashcards.
Oh, okay. So
So-
it's not an app?
Well, he said they didn't create the app, but it's an app that you can use flashcards on. So that's the best way I can explain it.
It is an app.
So you make your own flashcards on the app?
Jonathan knows what Jonathan's.
It's an app, and so you download the app, and then then what they do is they produce these things that are called decks, and it's basically just decks of cards, flashcards, and they're topical. So right now they have 3. One, I think there's only 1 or 2 that actually work right now, but so you would download these, and I guess they go into Dropbox or whatever, and then you just install them into the app. So I think all they do is they make the decks of cards.
Right.
The app already exists as just like a platform.
Right.
And so you just put your decks in, and then you just go through the questions, and then there's nowhere to answer. You just answer them in your head as you go. But
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
And it's helped us to better remember the message.
Yeah, well, yeah, so
What she
what
said.
if you don't know the answer to the question? You never know.
Well, I noticed the first one that I opened up, we're all about Brazil, and I was like, those are the wrong questions for me. I'm not ready for Brazil. Who is this and who is that? And when did this happen in Brazil? And I was like, okay.
So what happened when you tried it?
Oh, I mean, I just didn't go very far because I was working. I looked at it and then I had to go back to work. So I do have the email, or he sent it to me in Messenger. It sounds like he sent it to maybe Brother Jonathan too. So I'll send the email out. I asked him if it was okay to share it. So he said, okay. Okay, so going forward, we're going to look at World War I, World War II, and the counterfeit to have a better understanding of the counterfeit. Because, like I said, based on what I saw in that movie, and I haven't read the book, I'm not going to have time to read the book. I wouldn't mind, but I'm going to read the other one on Trump.
Of the 2 popes, right?
Yeah, the 2 popes, because there's a lot to be seen on how kind that man is to understand. And not that we understand that God is well able, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is what people are going to be faced with,
Mm-hmm.
is seeing this worldwide
Well,
gentleman.
That's why so many Catholics are going to come out, because they know him better than anyone else does. They know the
Amen.
papal system. They know, like, no, this is hypocrisy. I've been here all my life. I know exactly what's going on here, and this is lies. What they're
Yeah.
saying actually matches what
Right.
God thought Jesus
Praise the
was.
Lord.
And hitting people just doesn't pass me, so.
No.
Yeah, I don't know where Jesus ever slapped anybody. So, okay, so little review. Somebody else will have to monitor the chat if you want, or you'll have to speak up if nobody on our end monitors the chat for me. So in our previous studies, we looked at 2 major subjects. We spent time on Acts 27, where we looked at the 2 ships, the journey of Paul as a repeat and an enlarge. Those 2 ships are telling the same story of those institutions from 2 different perspectives, from the United States and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So we see this connection between the USA and Adventism beginning from the time of the end in 1798. In comparing and contrasting those institutions, we can learn a lot, particularly regarding the USA, because we have spent so much time studying Adventism. We know 1798, William Miller and the Millerite history. We trace that to 1844. We talk about the 2520, 1863, the rejection of our prophetic message, and then in our movement particularly. We're interested in that thread of history from 1798 to the Sunday Law. But if we consider the external history of the United States, we find that it's inseparable. At each waymark, we are also going to experience external, particularly in 1863 when it relates to the United States. So that's one lesson we learned from Acts 27. The United States and Adventism on the same journey, symbolized by the same ship. And I read that quote, or that part of that book last night where Anonymous in the warning talks about if we have another 4 years, the sixth sinks, I don't remember exactly how it said it, the ship would be sunk. So even the external is using the same phrase of the ship. So we understand our history, but we're seeing how it parallels with the United States history. And if you remember right, we were saw how she taught how we thread the needle through, and the external and internal line up. So then we also considered the number 273, and it brought us into the history of Pyrrhus, and we saw Pyrrhus comes in two parts, an alpha and an omega history. And so we find that the King of the South exists in two histories. First in Macedonia, and where do we get Pyrrhus from? From the number 273, but what is Pyrrhus? Where does Pyrrhus fit into this picture? Why do we study Pyrrhus? How did we get there? Not just the 273, but yeah.
Acts? What do you mean?
Acts 27, yeah. But where else in the Bible did Pyrrhus become a part of to us?
Daniel 11.
Daniel 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Tell us.
The Diadochi Wars, because they're hidden between two histories. So you have Alexander die and this whole long history, and then to the Four Horns, and it skips like 22 years.
Right. Okay. Did everybody follow that? I think we're all familiar with it. So for first in Macedonia, King of the South we see in two parts through Pyrrhus, and that's what this is teaching us. First in Macedonia and then in Italy. So you have his history in Macedonia, and then you have his history in Italy. So we're able to identify just with the King of the South and the history of Pyrrhus an alpha and an omega. And we saw that we could bring this into our history, and then after 1798, there's going to be an alpha and an omega of a King of the South. One of these we find in the history of World War II, and can actually trace it all the way back to 1917 to 1989. But the particular story we have highlighted was this World War II fight between Hitler and Stalin, between fascism and communism. And then we saw that World War II tells us about World War III, Hitler and Stalin, and then Trump and Putin. So you would have Hitler and Stalin, World War II, and Trump and Putin in World War III. So if we can see back here at Guadalupe, which was April of 2019, World War II had not opened up. That opened up, I think, right before Germany. Maybe somebody can correct me on that, but World War I, did I say it that way? World War I opened up right around the time of Germany and the camp meeting. And we laid out our histories, we cut our lines, and we did the exact same things that we would do with modern and ancient Israel. And we are not only going to do this then from our omegas, we want to go back to our alpha and also draw lessons from these histories. So we cut the line here. It was one line of history, cut the line. Then we're going to bring it down here and show it one underneath another, where Italy comes underneath Macedonia. And so you're going to layer them on top of each other and learn more and more pieces of information to help us as we continue on. So you've got Pyrrhus. Go ahead, somebody.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had. I was just going to mention when you're done there, maybe.
No, go ahead.
Can you just go back one slide?
I think I can.
Oh.
How do I do that?
Maybe it's not important.
Click on those green ones.
Click on what?
Click there on the screen ones. Oh, went forward.
And now I don't know how to go back.
Oh.
What about the arrow keys on your laptop?
Escape, just escape and then.
I guess it's not really important.
No, escape.
Too late now.
So, there you go. Okay, now go back to the slide you want to go back to.
Yeah, she's got me all started over. Hang on one
No,
second.
no. You're not selected on the right.
Yeah, select the slide you want to go to, right here.
Thank
No,
you.
but he wanted the one before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There you
and
go.
now I play.
That's the one there, yeah. I probably didn't even need to go back. It was just more for memory, where it says at the bottom, but the particular story that we highlighted was this World War II fight between Hitler and Stalin, between fascism and communism. I'm behind in the video, so maybe I'm not fully getting everything yet, but I was talking to a friend last night, and we were talking about how the whole conservative Trump movement is being connected with fascism and with Hitler, right?
Right.
And that whole it's like that whole kind of movement, even that we saw internally, it was to draw out. I want to make sure I don't say it the wrong way, but it was to draw out the overly conservative-minded people. Like it seems like that's what happened within the movement. But now we're hearing about the papacy, and the papacy represents communism. A lot of people associate the papacy with communism, and because they're socialist and all this. So now it seems like what Elder Tess has been saying is that because they're the counterfeit of this movement, they're counterfeiting the liberalism that is in this movement, but their liberalism is going to be incorrect, and that certain people are going to go after them. And it's interesting because there's this connection that it's like Trump as one thing was used to draw out conservatives, and then the papacy is going to be used to draw out the ones that are I don't want to say overly liberal, because I don't think that's the right way of saying it, but the ones that are incorrectly liberal in the movement.
But no, because you're totally right. Because when I saw, what's his face? And I was telling Elaine this the other night, when I saw AOC and Michael Moore endorse Bernie Sanders, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that's the socialism. It doesn't make any sense. It didn't match with what we thought, the liberals were supposed to be fighting for good. So that mixed me up in my head. But I'm like, it never made sense to me that they would endorse him. And so when that came out, I'm like, oh, now it makes perfect sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Brother Eber was saying on the WhatsApp, he was kind of mentioning there was this big discussion going on about liberalism, and there's a correct version of it and an incorrect version of it. And basically what happened was, we were, like most of us, not everyone, but most of us were quite conservative, and God was trying to show us that we're too far to the right. And so some people listened to what God said and others didn't. But the ones who listened, there was mention that there was fanaticism that kind of came into the movement at that time also, because some people were gravitating way too far to the left now as like a pendulum swing, but that's what was in their hearts, right? And so we need to draw back, because really where we're supposed to be is the center. We had to come to the left of where we were, but not go all the way to the left either. So it seems like there's this the second movement that is going to happen is going to be the big test for those that are overtly too far to the left now. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's what the papacy is going to do, because they're going to present a type of liberalism that is going to be an incorrect one. And it's going to draw people away.
And he pointed out, I saw some of that chat, I think it might have been a different one, but I saw some of what he posted on that because we've seen Elder Tess actually lay it out, and I think I've seen Parmenter do it too, when it comes to the King of the North and the King of the South. The King of the North is church over state, and the King of the South is state over church, but Christ is in the middle.
He's
where it's equal.
Yes, equal.
It's church and state, and it's equal.
And it was about,
but equal.
Separate
I think
movie.
they said,
Go ahead, John.
Eber was saying something about a balance between the message of equality and then the message of a hierarchy in heaven.
Right.
I didn't fully understand it, but it seemed like the message of equality was the message given to us as conservative minds, but then there's still a message of hierarchy in heaven that needs to go to those of a...
It's the theocracy, isn't it?
Theocracy, yeah. The true theocracy in heaven, that there is still a God with commandments and rules and,
Yeah. The people that are there by choice, and they as opposed to being enslaved to one or the other, the King of the North or the King of the South, enslaved to one or the other. They're there by choice, and they understand they'll have the right. They'll be in the right place with equality, as opposed to our liberalism. I think is the word I was looking for. They'll be in the right place when it comes to liberal, not be like you said. They come into the balance, as opposed to going too far left or too far right.
Yeah.
That's when you think of judgment, the scales are meant to be balanced, right? They're meant to be not over heavy on one side.
Right.
Yeah. And the whole thing with getting too liberal in the dress and the clothes and the makeup and stuff never made sense. Like, it doesn't, because even liberals, there's a lot of them who are like, this is still slavery. You're still trying to abide by standards of that society that actually men set, because they want women to wear makeup to work, to look pretty and all of this stuff. And women are like, no, I'm done with this. Like, this is garbage. I know.
I saw that as it's a trap.
Before I even, like, it wasn't even because of, like, religious reasons that I never got into it. I'm like, this is literally like slavery. Why is my face so horrifying to people that I have to, cover it up with garbage? I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
It's almost like a slap to God in the face.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I always told people that it's like slapping God in the face. Like, he made you, and then you're gonna, cover it up because
you can make it better than what he
exactly
did.
Yeah. You're telling what he did is garbage. So
yeah.
And I know it's pretty raw saying it like that, but in my head, that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah.
Especially when you work for Mary Kay Cosmetic Directors for a living.
Well, yeah.
But I do point that out to them
Yeah.
whenever I have the opportunity. They know I
Yeah.
don't wear makeup anymore. They know I don't use the product anymore.
Yeah, I understand though, because there are those, issues where like I can be real. I did go through acne, and at that point, it was tempting to do it.
Yeah.
But I was like, Lord, I'm real with God. I was like, if I have to bear through this, help me, please. Like if I can't wear makeup, then you better like help me to be able to look decent enough so I don't need it. Because yeah, it was. Now that experience was hard.
So
But
yeah, it was definitely the liberal side swinging to the left in the movement was a trap for some, but it also reveals what's in our heart, and we have the opportunity, if that's what's in our heart, to surrender it and let God help us to come to the right place and be on the right side of every issue.
Yeah, because honestly, I don't know how many years ago I decided to not. I think it was like not too shortly after high school. I was like, this doesn't make sense to have all that. It's bad for your skin to cover your pores all the time like that. And clothing, I always wore loose stuff, and I'm like, it's so much freedom. You feel so comfortable, and it's so freeing not to care what other people think about you. You know what I mean? And I'm like, if people are willing, it's always been that way. It's hard and you struggle with it, but the moment you get rid of it, you're like, oh, it's much better this way.
Yeah.
And God has the power to help everyone come to that conclusion, whatever they're struggling with.
Amen.
He knows what's best for everyone. And I'm going to hold tight to that quote where it says, if you knew how it's going to look like in the end, you would have been way happy to do it.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So go where he leads.
Yeah.
And we will not fail. Go where he leads. Okay, so let's see. And we're not only going to do this then from our omegas, we want to go back to our alpha and also draw lessons from these histories. So we're going to stack the alpha and the omega on top of each other. So we need to take World War II and Pyrrhus history and overlay them with our own. So this becomes us in the history of the United States and in the history of Russia and the United States from 1989 to the Sunday Law. So it becomes the history. And this becomes the history of Pyrrhus and Macedonia. So you have the ancient Israel, and then you have us here. But you're putting together Pyrrhus, his alpha and his omega, and you have Stalin, and then Putin, you have the king of the south, alpha and omega. And you're going to compare the first history with the Millerite history, and the last history with our history. You're going to do the same thing here with ancient Israel. So we now have these histories, alpha and omega, on these lines. This forms the first history and the second history. In Elder Parmenides' class, he looked at a concept of Israel because you could talk about Moses, Christ, Millerites, and us. So that's what we see, Moses, Christ, Millerites, and us. And we find failure and success. And there you have a failure. The alpha is a failure. The omega is a success. You have a failure and a success. So you have failure here and you have success here, failure here and success here. We have observed that from our chart that there are differences in World War II history with the King of the South. It shows us there are differences in the history of Israel. The history of the Millerites is going to have differences, not just in 1844, but we also need to observe a couple of others. We're going to expand on that concept in a later study. So even though we overlay the histories, there are differences, and we can learn from those differences. We learn from the similarities, and we also learn from the differences. So we identified failure and success, but out of all of this, we combined these lines, and we saw that we have 4 sequential battles. The first battle lines up with 2016, and that is Ipsus. The second battle with 2018, that's Heraclea, and that we first understood what we first understood to be called Raphia, Asculum. Did I have that right? Yeah, I have that right. And the final battle, which we understand as Panium. So you have Ipsus, Heraclea. This one we first understood to be Raphia is Asculum, and this one we first understood to be Panium, but that's Beneventum. Of these 4 battles, you have Ipsus, Heraclea, Asculum, and Beneventum, these 4 battles that came from these histories. So we have 4 sequential battles: Ipsus, Heraclea, Asculum and Beneventum. Then we would consider World War II down here, World War II on this, down underneath, Poland, the invasion of Poland, August 1940. And then we have the invasion of the Soviet Union, which is Operation Barbarossa. And then we have the end of the war. Who remembers flashcard? Who remembers? I'm only asked questions I know the answer to, but maybe not. But who remembers the end of World War II?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Which
Was it
part of it?
1941?
45.
45? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
45.
I was close.
Oh, you just wanted the year? Just
yeah,
the,
just
oh.
a year. I was close.
When was Operation Barbarossa?
Ooh.
Not,
That was a Nazi Germany thing, right?
yeah, it was
So
not too
when
far behind. that.
Hitler invaded Russia.
1949?
42? 40,
41?
I think it was 41.
Oh,
I think it was 41.
okay. So all
Anybody
I had to
recall
do
that?
was just switch it.
I want to say April. Anybody remember?
June. Brother Jonathan says June.
I don't know
41.
if that was, hold on. Oh, it was June 41, okay.
41, we were right about that. Okay.
What 1 month?
So do some
Oh,
flashcard
no, I'm just,
testing.
I thought you were
No.
verifying, I know, but I thought you were verifying the
Let me
answer.
see, I will.
Say somebody should make some flashcards with this.
Brazil's doing that. Brazil's doing that, and he might join us on our study.
June
session.
22nd, 1941 to December 5th, 1941.
There you go. Thank
So
you.
it was a 6-month.
So, was somebody gonna say something? No? Okay. So we have our 4 battles here. We've identified the 4 battles from history. So we then have 3 different histories to teach us about these battles. And what we want to do is go into the history of 2016 and understand what that battle looked like, because 2016 is the key that explains these other 3. Because in the Battle of Ipsus, what mode of warfare was used that decided the victor? Everybody knows that answer, and it's on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
Elephants.
Somewhere else.
Elephants.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so elephants, Heraclea, elephants, Asculum, elephants, and Beneventum was elephants. So it's elephants at each one of these battles.
Mm.
So the same mode of warfare used in 2016 decided the winner of 2018. So when you come to our line, which is not here, but we can see us as here, 2016, 2018, so we do have the dates there. The mode of warfare that was used here is the same mode of warfare that's going to be used here. What mode of warfare was used in 2016?
Elephants.
It had to be the same, right? Elephants.
Information.
What do
Oh.
elephants mean?
Oh, information warfare. Sorry.
I didn't see any elephants right now.
Information warfare. So information warfare, and if you remember when we did our studies on Ipsus, where she was I think it was a study on Heraclea. I think it was a study on Heraclea that she emphasizes that if you want to know what Raphia looks like, look at Heraclea and also look at Ipsus. So to understand Raphia, so if we are to understand Raphia by what happened in Ipsus and what happened in 2016 and 2018, and we need to understand Raphia, now we need to understand Panium. What are we going to look at?
All the other ones.
We're gonna
We're
look
gonna
at
all the other ones.
Last 3.
Okay, so the same mode of warfare in 2016 decided the winner in 2018, and it's also going to be the same mode of warfare used at Raphia and Panium. And this study was actually presented prior to November 9. So we need to understand, if we're going to understand Raphia and Panium, we need to understand Ipsus and Heraclea. We'll look at both those battles in the next study. Not today, though.
This is just a thought.
Yeah?
The Republicans are elephants.
Yeah, I know that thought has come up many times, yeah.
Okay, that was my thought.
Yeah, that was my very first thought. I think that there were several people that thought that when she first started talking about elephants, and then after going through the study myself, it's like, duh, I finally got it. It took me a long time to get it, but she's talking about emphasizing the fact that elephants at that time were a new mode of warfare.
Okay.
So it's not so much the elephant, it's the fact of what it represents.
It's the mode of warfare. Okay.
It represented the mode of warfare, and it was a new mode of warfare.
I didn't know about that till because of this, I finally found out that that was elephants, but I didn't know.
You thought it was Republicans too?
No, I didn't know what elephants and donkeys were. I never heard of God as Republicans and Democrats.
Oh,
I only
thought-
heard of red and blue. That's all I ever knew was red and blue.
Hmm.
You've probably never seen any of the political cartoons then.
I always hated those. I never. Yeah, I wasn't a big.
So we reminded ourselves of this pattern, but we also want to consider the methodology we're going to use. So if we're to consider the time of the end, and we were to talk about the internal, we've taught in this movement that our increase of knowledge is from 1989 to 1991. So we've got our increase of knowledge down here, and you can see the line there depicting the increase of knowledge. We're having an increase of knowledge, and then we can see it's formalized in 1996. Here, 1996. I have a 1990 in there, sorry, but 1991 is what I meant to point to. So, so then we can see it's formalized in 1996, tested at 9/11, and we traced these external histories connected with the internal events. And there are a couple of principles that we need to remember. So this was from last week's study, the whole board work here, but you have 1989, 91 being the increase of knowledge, and then you have it formalized here, and then a test. So when we taught that everything that comes after the message that we're teaching now is found in the increase of knowledge, it is an accurate representation that everything that comes after is encapsulated in the increase of knowledge. So whatever comes after was all encapsulated in this message. And we see that in the Millerite history as well, where William Miller is studying and comes to 1818, and he says he believes that in about 25 years, Christ will come back. So the whole message was encapsulated in the Millerite history as well. It's just a matter of continuing to unseal more light. There needs to be other information to expand on those subjects, but you can pin it all back into this time period where it is encapsulated form at the increase of knowledge. And we teach that in our message, that this increase of knowledge of Daniel 11:40, we find all that comes after, we can trace and pin back to the increase of knowledge. If we apply that to their internal, we should apply that to the external. And if we're going to take this history of warfare and battles of the King of the South, we should take it back and pin it to the external events of 1989 to 91. And you see a few elements of this history. So same thing with an increase of knowledge here. And then you have William Miller has basically the message. And there's just more things that are going to enhance the study and add to it. So we discussed one of them in our previous study. Where is the USA on November 9, 1989? And that would be here. Where's the USA? When the Berlin Wall falls, where is the United States in that work? Did the United States do that?
Yeah, they did. Well, no, they were part of it.
Were they there?
No.
No.
The people did it, but they were influenced by the beliefs and ideals of the U.S. that they spouted through all the radio shows.
Right. But it was the people themselves in Russia that did it, or the Soviet Union that did it. But they were definitely getting information from outside. So they're not there. You can't see them because everything that built up to November 9.
Because remember, Gorbachev let the media in.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment he did that and the Russians saw life in capitalism, they're like, that's what we want.
Right.
And they were like, we're done with
And
it.
then they fought what they had until the wall came down. So because everything that built up to November 9 was in the 46-year history of the Cold War, back here prior. And if you didn't keep up with those external events and you come to 1989, you would have a hard time blaming the United States. Because if you were just witnessing the news, November 9, you see the wall come down and you don't see us there. It was the people that stood up against because like Adriana said, they wanted what we had. It becomes harder in our time than it was in theirs because what's done more openly in the Cold War history is even more secretive in our own, but it still required you to keep up with external events. who overthrows Gorbachev in 1991 and who initiates that. It's not the United States, it's his own people. This is the history of an internal revolution, and the USSR, or King of the South, was destroyed from the inside, undercover. That's the first lesson we can learn. Destroyed from the inside. We also discussed the subject of internal and external waymarks. In Millerite history, for the most part, not in every case, we see they had the subject of Islam in 1840. That proved their day for a year principle. But when we traced these waymarks from April to October, particularly from 2001 to 2019, so April 2001 to October 2019, their reform line is not built like ours. It's internal events. So Millerites only had internal events. And what they were required to do from 1798 is follow the development of this internal message from William Miller and the other pioneers who developed it. So you can come to April 19, there's an internal event, it impacts the message, and then there's a disappointment. July 21st in 1844, Samuel Snow brings a message. It continues to grow and expand, and what the Millerites are doing at every waymark are following the development of this internal message. Our reform line is built a little differently, and that is how we connect our external events.
Makes you wonder why. Because if you think about it, the Millerites had the last message. Their job was to open up the last prophetic message. But in our time, that message was already opened up, but they failed. So it has to be repeated in a different way. But because all that time elapsed, Satan went to work doing things where God can now show us how he's working externally.
Wow, amen.
Right?
That's amazing.
So that's why we have both now. Because they wouldn't have had that then. Satan didn't know what was happening or how it was going to go down. God made it happen to his people, and then he's like, aha, okay, I'll do this too.
Yeah, because he's a copycatter.
Yeah.
And we all saw last week, those in Cottonwood and then whoever joined online saw, because you guys did the same study we did, about how Islam was in that thread.
Yeah.
In that thread.
And that's the thing, is that you can't erase that history having happened, because it was supposed to be the last history, but because it happened and it failed, it altered everything. It changed everything. So it's going to look different in our time. Parminder said that. It's like it's never going to be able to look the same because it happened and it alters things.
Amen.
And it's going to change because of also the time you're living in. But it happened and it altered everything. And so now we have to understand that history, but we have to understand how it works in our time.
Amen.
Right.
I think because if it was the same, what would we even need to prepare for? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, exactly.
If it was the same,
All Adventism would already.
Actually, yeah, if the future was the same as the past, you know, I mean, we know that history repeats, but it's not exactly the same history. If it did, then there would be no use for prophecy, right?
Or interpretation of it.
Exactly, of understanding what the future will be like, because it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be prophecy.
That's why you have prophets. There wouldn't be prophets either, because Parminder was like, prophets are the ones who know how to look at the past in the right way to figure out what the future is going to look like. Mm-hmm. Because it's not going to look exactly the same. Otherwise, you wouldn't need a prophet there. Mm-hmm. So you have to have someone who can discern what is happening in history to say, I can tell you what's going to happen in the future now.
And it's also the fact that nothing comes without hard work. And if it was going to be really the same and there was no effort had to be put into it, would you be prepared for
your character
it?
wouldn't be developed.
Your character wouldn't be developed, because going through this process is our character development. And so it was necessary as well for that. Then nobody would make it. We have a mouse here somewhere. Here we are. Okay. So now we're not just tracing the development of an internal message, we're tracing the development of external events. And that is one work that as a movement we have been behind in doing, whether we didn't see the need or we were looking in the wrong places. Well, think about it, about all those quotes. I remember years ago when I was fairly new at Sac Central, and few people seemed to get wind of what I did for a living, and so I wound up working on putting together the church newsletter. And I always remember Mary, she was the editor, and she'd send me the articles, and I'd be the one to place them. And I remember her sending me an article. Yeah, I remember her sending me an article saying that it was a Spirit Prophecy quote that talked about politics. Now, keep in mind, I didn't know any of that at the time, but it talked about voting and not being involved in politics and not voting, you know, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And she told me that if I put something like that in there, they'd have my head. And I go, why? I was like, I always ask, why? If that's what the Spirit Prophecy says, and why shouldn't we hear it? You know, but you know, think about it, that's the direction that they, you know, that they wanted. You know, you got the people that are believing not to be in politics, and they've all accepted that, but they don't want to accept it and actually live it. You know what I'm saying?
That's crazy, but I didn't know you were part of the Central Newsletter. That's interesting to know.
But if we don't trace the development of from 1989 to 1990, then we come down to 2016 in Ipsos, and we're looking for a hot war. So if we're not tracing these developments all the way through, when we get here, and keep in mind in 2016 is when it opened up about the King of the South, that the King of the South, as we always thought was dead, is not dead, that he has a resurrection, he has a second history here. Well, the resurrection anyways, because he's had his first history back here. So we see this resurrection, we can't properly understand it, and that's why everybody was expecting a hot war, because they did not understand this history. Okay, so let's see. So we come down to Ipsos, and we're looking for a hot war at Raffia. We cut our thread, and we're saying that there's about to be a battle, and we are ignoring its development. By the time we get to 2019, Putin has been president for 20 years, and he hasn't been sitting on his hands for that period. Then we find that we can take these external events back to the time of the end and pin them here at 1991.
You know, that's so interesting. I don't mean to cut you off, but just hearing that out loud, Putin has been president for 20 years. Can you imagine Trump being president for 20 years?
Earth wouldn't last that long.
I know, I'm just saying.
Let's no flesh will survive.
I mean, he would destroy the planet if he had enough time. No one would survive.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a thing.
No flesh would survive.
He doesn't have the nationalism. All it breeds is hatred and despisement of everyone else around you, and everyone hating each other. And the world where the global economy has to rely on each other to function, it's over.
Yeah.
There's not going to be horrible problems.
Yeah,
You know what I
and
mean?
he can say all he wants. I destroyed my country, you know, and proudfulness or whatever. Like, yeah.
What's the point?
I
There's
know.
nobody left to serve you.
Exactly.
They don't know the end from the beginning.
Yeah, like, I'm so proud. I know it all. I, basically ruined it for myself, or ruined.
So this is
whatever.
what gives us the information about what this war looks like, the beginning of its development. So this is, by looking here, is how we know what this is going to look like. And we saw no weapons here, right? We saw no hot war.
Well, that just made me think of Satan, because he did that to himself. Basically, he has, when you think about it, he's so proud, and he's doing all of this evil. And then when he has to sit for that 1,000 years to think upon in timeout, to think about what he has done, it's just like interesting.
I wondered about that too, because I always had the question. I'm like, he knows he's going to lose.
Know.
He knows he's going to lose.
That's why he wants us all. He wants to take as many of us out with him.
And he knows what's coming, but he won't stop.
He can't stop. It's just set. His character is set. He can't. I mean, he has nothing to lose because he's already lost.
Yeah.
So it's not about him.
It's about us.
Interesting how that is the counterfeit of us. That is not about us. It's about serving others.
Mm-hmm.
And him, it's the same
about
thing.
destroying others.
Exactly. Whoa, that's so crazy.
Misery loves company.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Exactly. It's true.
It's true. Yeah.
He doesn't want to be destroyed alone.
Man,
And he
that's
wants
sad.
as many of God's people to be destroyed. You're right, because it's
That's
about
pathetic.
for us. It's not about us. It's about others.
Yeah,
for him, it's
exactly.
not about his destruction. It's about making sure that others are destroyed with him.
Yeah. Interesting. That's
How they
crazy.
parallel.
Also,
How they parallel.
also, he wants to prove the universe that he's right.
Oh man. There's no way he can prove to the universe, because that was already exposed at the cross. There's no way.
and he was deceiving the angels.
Yeah, but that actually got shed when he killed Christ. So at that point, everybody knew his true colors.
So we paraphrased a quote of Donald Trump's that he said in September last year. And what he said was that the rise of the internet occurred at the same time as the rise of the United States as the world's only superpower. So Trump makes the connection between the two, that they both happened at the same time. It's a profound observation. And I remember in the Brazil study, I know I put the links into some of that if anybody has those notes, but this is a profound observation coming from Donald Trump, because what he is saying is that the United States rose as the world's only superpower at the same time as the internet was rising up. And when was that? We know that the internet was rising up in 1989. The United States begins to rise as the only world superpower because prior to 1989, how many superpowers were there? You had, during the Cold War, you had two, the Soviet Union and the United States. In 1989, the United States begins to rise as the only superpower because the second one is losing strength and it's falling. And he compares and contrasts that event with the rise of the internet, the beginning of the time of the end. And it's really interesting when you think of compare and contrast, because that's what's happening in Washington. That's what's happening in religion. It dawned on me, call me slow, but when all the studies that Parmenter's been doing on juxtaposition and how you throw something, throw it together, right? So you've got religion that's all these different religions. They're all kind of separated and going their separate ways.
Wow. Go ahead.
But now you're going to bring them slam them up side by side, and now you can see the difference.
Exactly.
So you got Democrats and Republicans kind of working in compromise, right? They used to be able to work together, but slowly they got so on their ideals. Is that their ideology?
Ideology, yeah.
And so there's so much confusion and so many I didn't want to use the word lines, but so many different divisions among each.
Streams, winds.
Yeah, so nobody can really see. So now what we're witnessing is God is saying, okay, I'm going to throw them at you side by side, and you're going to see them. You know what I'm saying?
Wow, that's interesting way God shows true colors and, gets people exposed. It's an interesting way that God exposes people that way.
So why we need to understand parables and compare and contrast, because we're actually living in the parable.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So I think we finished that one, yeah. So he compares and contrasts the beginning of the time of the end.
That's what Parmenter said too. He's like, the tests are there to show everyone who's on which side. Yeah. Because other than that, you can have, conservatives who are vegan and who dress conservatively, and you're like, oh, they look holy on the outside. But then you give them an equality test, they fell that wholeheartedly. Oh, well, you're on the wrong side,
Yeah.
So it's like that's why those are the major important tests. The reform stuff is important for your body to work right so you can do this message, but the test is to show everyone who actually loves God or not. You know what I mean? It's the one thing that will separate the two classes.
And if you think about it, what we've been learning about compare and contrast, take it past beyond the Sunday law when you have Francis leading the Catholic Church with equality.
I know. That's when we go head to head.
The true test to try to understand when you've got the two looking very similar.
But that it has to happen that way because the 10 kings
to truly test.
Yeah.
They have to be deceived. And it's not until afterwards that they realize the whole intention the whole time was to destroy God's actual people.
Okay, I have two thoughts. The first one, in connection with that, it makes me think of my dad, because he would tell us, how do you tell a fake dollar bill to a
hold it up to the counterfeit,
to the
truth,
exactly. So it's pretty interesting. That just came up into my head. Wow, that memory. But then what was the other? Oh yeah, and thinking of superpowers, because it's interesting at 1989 that you have the World Wide Web, but before that, if you go to 1969, it was the first time that a man went on the moon. And then they were dominating in the technology there. But then I think it was the Soviet Union or something, they had this thing where they discovered something on Mars or something like that. And then they became booming. So this whole internet thing became the boost, I think, to keep the United States as the superpower, you know, with information. I don't know. It's just thought. I could be wrong, but it was just something.
I always wondered why we don't talk about the Cold War, because that wasn't fought with real physical weapons. That was an information war, the whole thing. And propaganda on who's doing better in the world, like Victoria just said, with the whole arms race. The arms race was huge. They didn't actually use them. It was the idea that who's stronger, you know, the image of.
She does talk about it. She talks about how that's when MAD came in, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, but in terms of the type of warfare, you know what I mean? Because they were still using information war.
Yeah, right. And that's what brought us to eventually to this. But you're forced to figure out a new way to fight.
Yeah,
and
the
internet became that path.
Tool, yeah.
That tool, yeah. So in 1989, at the time of the end, Tim Berners-Lee writes a paper called Information Management, a Proposal. Nothing is developed, but it's a plan. So that's 1989. He writes the proposal, but it's not developed yet. And there's something he can do to that internet to turn it, because remember they had the internet, ARPANET, right? So they had it, but they weren't able to put in information and access it. So they wanted to turn it into what they call information creation engine, where you can put out information and access information.
Is that where the URL came in? Or is that?
That's along the way.
Oh yeah, because she does talk about that's the deep web started because of the Cold War, information warfare, and the spies in Russia. Yeah, I remember.
So at this stage, it's just a proposal. In 1990, it begins to take form. He creates the first web browser, and that was why I had 90 on there on that previous slide. So the first web browser he creates. In 1991, it's released to the companies and then to the public in the same year. And you have the release of the World Wide Web. And something I looked up and read on him, that he actually gave it for free.
What do you mean?
Well, he's the one that developed all of it.
Well,
and
he didn't sell it.
He didn't sell it. He he initially saw it as a good thing, but he also saw the potential of it. And now, I don't want to say he laments. I don't want to put the wrong words in there, but he does not like what they've done with it. Just like
you couldn't have sold it. If he would have sold it, it would have been privatized, and then people would have used it for much worse things. You know what I mean? Only one person would have had all the power. But the fact that he released it to everyone for free, then it also was like a mad thing where it kept everyone in check.
With that thought, it makes me think how much God's hand was in that. Because do you know how many people discovered certain inventions and wanted to offer that stuff for free and got killed in the process? Now, that could be conspiracy theories, Lord help me, but I don't know. But, you know, but like Nicholas Tesla or something, you know, and he wanted to create free energy using, what was it, crystal or something like that, you know, just way better than what we're using now that would cause less pollution, but they killed him. Well, that's what it said, but you know, I don't know the whole story. So I really don't want to put that out there because I really don't know. But it is true that he was the one who discovered that and then something happened. So I don't know. But it's interesting how God's hand was in that, because there's no way that the government will want something like that to get in the hands of the people for free.
Yeah, but that's why it makes me think it's a conspiracy, because they would have wanted to sell it and make money off of it, and that never happened either. A whole privatized business, conglomerate with billions of dollars could have come out of it, you know what I mean?
With Bill Gates.
That's what I'm saying. Every time there's a new type of something that's cool found, they don't want it free for everyone.
Exactly.
But they do want to control it and make money off of it, which they never did.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying that's the hand of God. Well, no, that's why I'm saying it's the hand of God, because there's no way, if you get what I'm saying. Like, that's the hand of God that it was allowed to be free for everyone, and that I'm
talking about the crystal energy.
Oh, I'm talking about the internet. Okay. Sorry.
So then we saw, somebody gonna say something?
That was a tablet that
Then we saw in 1996, by the time of the formalization of our message, at the same time, Russia has realized it can use this engine to attack the United States. what they want is information. And this was Moonlight Maze. This was here in 1996. They gained access to the Navy, the Department of Defense, and they stole a great deal of information for the Russian military. So you have the first Russian hacking in 1996. The same year, you have the release of Google, the creation and release of Yahoo, the beginning of Fox News, and this is one we need to discuss more and more. We just Fox News, and then we also discussed Krypton, which was the predecessor of WikiLeaks.
Yeah, it came before WikiLeaks.
So you have Moonlight Maze, the first hacking by Russia. You have Google, Yahoo, Fox News. Also, the Washington Post and the New York Times, they were already in existence, but they went online in 1996.
I'm trying to think, where was I in 1996? I think, well, I was
You were fairly
6.
young.
I was like 5, going
Yeah.
on 6 or something, depending on the time. So that means, oh, wow. Because I'm thinking about when I actually used the computer, you know, like
Yeah.
when I started using that, like, anyways.
And I always think it's an interesting point and I know I laid this one out with my dad long before we got to the point we're at today, but it was the Washington Post and the New York Times that broke Watergate. And they were accused of being the liberal press, right? And accused of making up stories and lies, the liberal press and all that. You go back and watch all the
I can
president's
nod my
men.
head, but I don't know.
Go back and
The
watch
New
all
York
president's men.
Times, so a leaker took the papers from Watergate that were released, all these things. That's how it came out, is that they got a hold of all those papers from Watergate and they gave it to someone at the New York Times and they started publishing them. They had thousands of papers. And then the good old Nixon decided, well, we'll just sue the New York Times because this is private information. And it was, you know, freedom of, it should have been information free to the public, but they sued the New York Times. So then the Post got a hold of those papers too, and they're like, well, are we going to release it or not? Because we might be a lot, you know, in the same problem that the New York Times is. And they're like, you know what, whatever happens, we have to publish this. And they kept publishing the information, and they ended up winning the lawsuit against Nixon. And that was like a huge thing for the liberal
That's pretty
Post
cool.
had to stand up for the truth, even though they could face horrible consequences.
Yeah.
And
What party was it what party was Nixon?
He was a Republican.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah.
Republican. And I saw a story on this because the lady in charge of the Post, she was friends with a lot of people named in those papers. And so she was like, because she was a fancy pants, had money, she had her dinner parties with these people named in those papers. And she was like, this is what news is. You can't shut up, you know, the truth. You have to tell the people the truth. And so she just let it go. And she's like, here we go, we're doing it. Isn't that crazy? And anyways, we look at them as, you know, people, but you never know where they're going to be because they stood up for the truth when it mattered in their time of test. We don't know where you're
Yeah, and I've been praying for the Democrats to get filled with boldness and courage, but also protection for those witnesses that are coming forth. And there's going to be more. Because the guy that wrote the warning, he says that he's going to identify himself, and he says that others are coming with him. We can kind of see that with John Bolton coming out, that others are coming out too.
It's kind of messed up. Did you see that clip where Trump was like, there's so much information in my mind, but where Trump says it's over or something like that, because there's this clip showed what him agreeing with.
Bolton?
Yeah, Bolton
Yeah, I saw
agreeing.
that. I actually just watched it this morning.
Yeah, I thought that was just like that. It just seems when people aren't consistent, it just messes things up, you know, because then it just kind of takes away your credibility when you do come out with the truth. So it's like, dang. But at the same time, the truth is the truth. So hopefully people will, you know, look beyond that. But Trump has a way of discrediting people by throwing, okay, you're going to say this now, but look at what you did back then. And see, Trump has it at the point that when people do it to him, it's all like, well, we can overlook that. He has that thing over people. But when other people,
attack.
exactly. But when other people do it, they don't have that prestige because nobody looks at them like that. So it's pretty sad. I mean, it's pretty sad.
Those tactics reach the debasing animal part of the heart. That's not, you know, a logical like moral, intelligent way to look at situations where, oh, they did it in the past, so I'm going to do it now. That's like an unfair little kindergarten way of looking at everything.
Exactly.
But that's the animal thing inside the people that he's touching. And that's what Elder Tess said many times, because some of the quotes she said, the newspaper guys, they're like, Donald Trump managed to hit a spot in his base that no one has ever hit before, this American pride idea, you know what I mean? Exceptionalism and the idea that we're not that great and all this stuff. And he hits that animal part. That's why if you have that animal part,
you relate to that.
And the more you use it, the more it grows.
Ooh, that's even worse. So
yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I mean, to me, when I watch the process and watch these Republicans deny and lie like they are, they're taking themselves into deeper and deeper.
They
darkness.
are. You're digging your own pit, because by your words you're condemning yourself.
Right.
So the more you lie and deny and deny and deny, you're just digging a bigger pit. For when the truth does come out, you're just done. And we're not talking about like, okay, this goes beyond, because when you stand before God, then there's no excuse. Really, there's no excuse. But I've been in that situation where I had to fight, not necessarily fight, but where people were denying this stuff, and it was all in front. I know what it's like when people are trying to tell somebody the truth and people want to like scoot past it and deny that stuff. But at the same time, through that, I had to learn to allow God to fight my battles, because that was one battle that I did work closely with God to fight. So that is just interesting when you come across people who deny stuff. That just really it's just one of my things.
Yeah. So is that for them the same thing as rejecting the first angel's messenger and going into strong delusion?
That's what I think.
Because you had that initial, they all even talked about Trump when he was campaigning,
exactly.
like he's a crazy person.
Yeah.
And the moment they decided to put their morals and intelligence away and go follow him for the sake of their jobs, and it looks like now they believe everything he says, and they just went into strong delusion.
Yeah, it just
doesn't it?
Yeah. It just saddens me with Rand Paul though, because his dad, Ron Paul, my dad used to kind of like him, like as a libertarian, and then, but he wasn't too much on his son. But when I see Rand Paul, how can you even say the things you're saying? Like, I don't know, like the relationship between him and his dad, like, did you not, like, I wonder what his dad is thinking about him and what he's saying and backbiting and going backwards on his word.
In that book, The Warning, he talks about what causes them to follow. And I read a piece of it last night, or some of it. I don't remember if I read that section, but what causes them to follow, and fear is one of them. Fear of reprisal.
Tribal.
Tribal something. Yeah. And when you have Trump saying that you're going to have your head I'll have your head on a pike if you go against me. And so, but they do it. There are those that do it because they see something in it for them to be because Trump is this name, he's a brand, he's got power, and they see
like Gates.
They are seeing
Matt Gates drives me crazy. I think it was after one of the nights, maybe it was Thursday night that I was listening to this. There were some MSNBC reporters, like during one of the breaks or after one of the days that they were doing the Senate trials. And it wasn't Matt Gaetz, but it was some of the senators that they were interviewing. And they were asking them simple, straightforward questions. And to watch them to try to dance around it was so cringy. Yeah. And it was like, the lady was like, I asked you straightforward questions. And well, let me answer. She's like, but you're not answering anything. Like, I asked you, what else besides Biden and Burisma, what else corruption was there in Ukraine that you guys were investigating to stop this funds? And he's like, well, and then the other senator lady, she goes, no, it was Biden and Burisma. She's like, that's what I'm trying to say. That's all you have. I'm asking you, what else is there? Because that's not, like, it was insane.
I know.
Yeah. And I'm like, how do people not see that and are like, what is happening?
Yeah. Can I just say something? Sister Jackie wants to add that it's the me first mindset. Yeah. And then Brother Jonathan says, it's self-gain too.
Yeah. Because they see with his brand, they're seeing beyond this administration what they're going to have in the future, having been connected with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They're gaining some, what do they call it? I remember back hearing the word when Bush
Clout?
became, did you say clout?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a different word, capital. They used capital, they used the word capital. They said that Bush had a lot of capital after 9/11. And now he's going to use his capital and go get what he wants. Now that I got a lot of you. So they're finding themselves gaining something, clout, capital, to be associated with them. It's really amazing to think that you see yourself being gaining something to be associated with that. What do we know they're gaining by being associated with him?
The same destruction.
The same destruction.
Yeah, and Sister Ali puts in a good point. Judas saw self gain too before he sold Christ of 30 pieces of silver. Boy, was he wrong. Yeah, he was definitely wrong. That's a sad one because he ended up killing himself. So I don't mean to chuckle, but yeah, that's pretty sad.
So in 1996, Julian, and that could be the fate of some of these people.
Ooh, yeah.
So in 1996, Julian Assange is already engaged in hacking activity, and he sees this website, Krypton, and he learns from them. He tries to work with them, but what he ends up doing is taking their concept and creating his own.
Man, that's true. Sister Ali says they forgot that 45 does not share. He only throws people under the bus.
Did I get recorded? Does it say recorded on there?
Yeah, I think so. I saw recording.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
okay, good.
Recording.
So this was so what did he sees Krypton and he wants it. He wants to be able to work with them, and they didn't want to. They work by themselves, and so then he created WikiLeaks, which we probably are familiar with. But Krypton was the inspiration for WikiLeaks. And not only do you have Google, not only do you have Fox News and hacking, now you also have the release of government secrets, all elements we find in our time.
Yeah.
So this is the first 6 to 7 years, but what we began to do is trace our thread of what these first years teach us about what war looks like in our time. It's the tool Vladimir Putin now has. When we talked about MAD, that was mutually assured destruction, and she refers to it in ours that you add economic destruction because that's what they're not going to use they're not wanting to use actual weapons to destroy each other because they know it'd be suicide, but also if they destroy the economy, if Putin were to destroy our economy, he knows it's going to hurt him. So this was the concept during the Cold War, but just a brief acronym to describe what this period looks like differently than how war is traditionally fought.
Oh,
and the reason it looks,
Sorry, it was Sister Christine who said they forget that 45 does not share. He only throws people under the bus.
Right.
I said Sister Ali.
Yeah.
Sister Christine.
So, and the reason it looks different is because to openly attack each other would be an act of suicide and what they called mutually assured destruction. So if you had a weapon, and you had a weapon and I had a weapon, and if I fired mine, knowing that would cause you to fire yours, it's more like suicide pacts. No one's going to fire. So they both have these nuclear weapons and neither party will use them. So they have to use unconventional methods to take down their enemy.
Thank you. That reminded me of what I was thinking about when I heard about China, because you know how the coronavirus is getting so bad that people are like Amazon and people are stopping trade with China, or importing products from China. So that, and they're the second highest in economic, and economy and things like that. Yeah. So that destroys their economy. There's no way that China can ever be a superpower. When you have that happening, their economy is about to go down. So it's like they just get pushed out of the way. So I thought that was interesting when that came to my mind. Like, that was really interesting.
So then we discussed the effect of the fall of the Soviet Union, because what isn't restraining the King of the South in the history is MAD, mutually assured destruction, or weapons. But after 1991, it's the economy their economy is privatized. All their major industries are sold off by the government, leaving just a handful of men who sometimes through murder and bribery destroy their rivals and very cheaply buy out those previously state-owned institutions. They buy them so cheaply that they very quickly become billionaires, and this is the creation of the Russian oligarch, one of Vladimir Putin's primary tools, or people who works through even more so than his government, because these ones are harder to tie to him. So he doesn't want to destroy his economy, and if he tried to destroy the US economy, so how to get rid of your, you had two superpowers, how to get rid of one so that you're the top superpower without destroying their economy, because it's going to destroy your economy. So now, after 1991, the King of the South has a new problem. If he destroys America, he will destroy their economy. If he damages the United States economy, he will also suffer. So he has to fight a war with the United States that does not look like a conventional war, because he needs as little retaliation as possible. And in that war, he needs to preserve the American economy. What he is doing, he has learned from American tactics and employs them against the United States. Those tactics are to weaken from the inside and to cause division. So just like the Soviet Union was destroyed from within, what he's seeking to do is get the United States to destroy itself from within.
Isn't that what Satan's tactic was before he got kicked out of heaven?
Yep.
Yeah, destroy from within. And he did the same thing with the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
To go seek to destroy within. There was a top Russian general who said just recently that there is no line now between war and peace. War in our day looks a lot like peacetime, and peace in our day looks a lot like war. And what he's saying, one of the heads of the Russian military, is it's very hard for us to now say whether or not we're at war or at peace, because they look the same. The line is gone between them, which is why we can walk through 2016 and not see the beginning of World War II. That line has been broken down because there is a new way of fighting. And if we remember right, 2016 at the Battle of Ipsus is marking the war on the Western Front. Let's see, it becomes more difficult to understand what is happening unless we look at it through the eyes of prophecy. And prophecy and parables become the same thing. We have to look at the world wars as a parable. They are lines, they are the lines combined with other histories that are going to give us clarity of what history we are walking through. So we see World War II begin here at 2016 and the war on the Western Front. And who's the Western Front? Who's the war with?
U.S. government.
The U.S. government. There are people in the American government who are saying that our current history is a repeat of Nazi Germany. That with the election of Donald Trump, they say 1933 Germany. If you were to take them to these lines, they would see it. But there are people in this world already watching this progress just by following the external events. But the situation becomes where if you don't want to see it, you won't. Is that right? If you don't want to see it, you won't see it. Which is why many people inside the United States, not just there, but worldwide, are becoming more and more divided. Because some people see their savior, Donald Trump, their Cyrus of Isaiah 46, from the Trump prophecy. Many of them are saying that. You have another side saying he's the last president of the United States, and that this is Germany 1933 and the rise of Hitler. The people are choosing one side or the other, external to prophecy based on how they navigate this history. So they're seeing it from the external events. They're not seeing it through prophecy. They're seeing it how they navigate through prophecy, through history. But we're given parables so that we have a sure foundation, and they leave us with no doubt about what is happening. So the two principles that we particularly discussed, the two methods we want to use to unlock this history. The first was connecting our waymarks, threading the needle through the waymarks, seeing the whole thread of what type of war all the way through. Identifying that we must trace these external events as a thread, just like we do with the internal message. And it's not enough to see a date in isolation. It has to be connected with a story, to a story. So people introduce the concepts now. They'll say they saw a new weapon in this history in 2019, and they'll say America has developed a new weapon, and they named it an elephant. Then they say this is proof that Pyrrhus is true because America has a new weapon called the elephant and are looking for elephants. And what is the problem with doing that? Take the weapon back to 1989 to 91 to 96, trace it through this history, connect it to the story, and explain how that weapon began in this history, 2019 in isolation. So you can't understand information warfare or the elephants just by looking at our current time. You need to take it back all the way back. When we do that, we become newspaper prophets, and it's not safe way to study prophecy. There are many things in our time called the elephant. Just the fact that they take that name does not mean that they have this mode of warfare developed for Raffia.
Wait, what is she saying?
I'm talking about, like, for instance, what you brought up earlier. Was it you that brought it up? The Republicans are elephants?
No, that was Sister Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that's what she's saying. I'm following what she's saying right there, but I'm saying just the fact that they take the name does not mean that they have the mode of warfare developed.
Because you understand elephant doesn't mean you understand what elephant stands for. I think that's what she's saying.
But she's saying for Raffia. What does she mean when
that is not, because people were still thinking it was a hot war.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. People would still think that it's somehow related to hot war.
Okay.
So to study prophecy in that way is dangerous because it leads us to make conclusions that break our rules and disconnect our waymarks and causes us to rely on newspapers for random stories.
How should we understand that?
Good question, because kind of complicated for me too, but she's pointing out the importance of looking at the entire reform line and looking at the beginning, like we've learned that for quite a while now, that Jesus declares the end from the beginning. You have to understand the beginning. So if you're looking at the newspaper and you're seeing, I'm thinking of, and I don't know if this is what her intent was here, but I'm thinking about when we already talked about this, when I first heard elephants, I mean, my mind immediately went to Republicans because that's what they are. So and we're seeing that the Republicans are on the wrong side of the issue. So I would be thinking that the elephants are the Republicans, but taking the whole concept of what elephants were, and they were a new mode of warfare. What is that mode of warfare? Tracing it back, going back and looking in the beginning history, because the beginning history is going to show us the end history. So you're going to be able to understand that there were not weapons, any kind of weapons of destruction, physical destruction, that took place 1989, 91, 96. So then you just become, like she's saying, newspaper prophets. You're just studying the news to try to figure out what's happening without actually understanding, going back to the past. Go ahead.
You guys know they moved the doomsday clock even closer to midnight, right? The people who made the doomsday clock and who unveiled it this week, they moved it. I don't remember how close, but it's like almost right on midnight. They're like, it's time to move it. Things are bad.
Yeah, so funny.
They said it's the worst. It's the furthest it's ever been, the doomsday clock. And I find that whole thing interesting. I don't know how they measure it or anything like that. I'm sure they have some sort of formula, but it's interesting because they're not wrong, right? Like they are seeing something that the world, like a lot of people are just kind of going in the world and just thinking everything that Trump is doing is just like, oh, whatever, 8 years or 4 years we'll deal with it. But so a lot of other people are seeing that that's not actually the case, that there is a whole lot more to what is going on right now. And they don't see it prophetically, but they do see the implications of everything that's happening. I don't know how that whole doomsday clock works, but I find it interesting.
Is that a harbinger?
I wonder if
doomsday clock like a harbinger?
I wonder if it's based on climate change too, because it's at a university that people made this, and I think it's
Can you hold on? Can you guys hear us? I think somebody else was talking because our internet went scoopy. So I think Allie was talking, and then Adriana. Allie, were you talking?
I'm sorry. I was just asking. Yeah, I am. Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
I was after John made his thought about whatever he just said about the doomsday clock. Like he had some good points there. And then I added to it, I was asking, is it like a harbinger to people in the world that know that there's something bad going to happen, but they don't know what it is because they don't have our prophetic message yet? It's like they're nothingums or something. Is it that kind of thing?
I don't know.
Just ask.
That's why I'm wondering if it's based off of a climate change thing, which both the United States and Russia and China with fossil fuels are, helping out with. But I'm pretty sure it's a university, if I remember right, that made this doomsday clock and unveiled it and moved it forward.
Sorry, Brother Jonathan says doomsday clock has been around since 1947. The doomsday clock is a symbol that represents the likelihood of a man-made global catastrophe. Atomic scientists made it.
Oh, atomic?
Yep. I'm just looking on the wiki page here. It was always, every time you see, at least I remember like the old pictures that I saw of them changing the doomsday clock, they were always wearing like their white lab coats. So it's
yeah.
So the first rule is to connect our waymarks, and we should know our external history. Syria at the moment is a proxy war. Why does the USA want control of Syria? And we should know that. And I added to this study, so we're going to do a quick review, and so put your Syria hats on the next 2 slides.
Flashcards.
Flashcards, because it wasn't part of the study, but I pulled it in from one of the other studies. So, but we should be following these external events and trying to understand them. So we need to understand what's going on with Syria. The other subject or tool we need to think about is compare and contrast. And we said yesterday, or in our last study, 2 battles we particularly want to understand is Ipsus and Heraclea. We want to understand 2016 and 2018, but these battles can't be understood unless we trace history, I think is what it's supposed to say. And we don't have time to go into such detail, but it has been done before in Brazil, and we'll continue to expand on the subject. But we first need to trace our past history, which we briefly did this morning. And we'll also I think we need to understand 2014. And to understand 2014, we need to see it as a compare and contrast. And what we're going to compare and contrast is the internal and the external. So here's a brief review on the proxy war. And I just kind of pulled the slides in and didn't go over it too much from memory. I was just going, but the next screen is going to have the map on it. But looking at the proxy war in heaven, you had Christ and Satan. They got different ideology. Talking about how God prepares Abel and forms a church. The great controversy of Satan prepares Cain. He forms a church, and it equals Babylon. So you got the proxy war going on, where we're all either on Christ's side or Satan's side in a proxy war. In Afghanistan, you have the United States versus the Soviet Union, or versus Russia. United States supports the rebels, and Russia supports the government in Afghanistan, or Soviet Union. 40 years later, Afghanistan is still getting destroyed, except for the U.S. and Afghanistan and the government. And so things reversed. Russia's supporting the rebels. So 40 years later, you have it the reversed. And it isn't over because political players propping up either side, and they're sending more arms and money, and hundreds of thousands of people have died. So Russia has pipelines into Europe. Others do not, and ships are used or needed and are much more costly. 2009, you have Qatar, US wants to build pipelines. So it has to do with the money or the oil that's going on in the pathway through. And maybe somebody else can help me better from my feeble understanding as we go through this. And then the next page has the map.
They both have to go through Syria, and Syria is the proxy war.
Right. So, and this is Qatar. And this was all back in 2009 when Obama was president. And the details are sketchy for me. So if anybody remembers the details better than I, that would be great. So Syria has Russia's.
Oh, sorry. I would dog him to my mind, but finish. I don't want to interrupt.
So Syria has Russia's only Navy base with direct access to the Mediterranean. Qatar has the largest U.S. Navy base there in the area. So for Qatar, allied with the United States, to supply natural gas to Europe, it would have to go through Syria, allied with Russia. So Syria is allied with Russia, but for Qatar to take natural gas through, they have to go through this area. So Syria knows he's trying to bypass his ally 2009, and they I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but 2011, Iran makes a plan, pipelines to go through Syria, and they say yes. So they didn't accept one way, and then they say yes.
But
yeah, they say no.
But you meant the wrong no.
Yeah.
You have the wrong no.
It's supposed to be no.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I was watching a documentary on Afghanistan, and the Taliban, which is the ones that are actually fighting against the U.S. in Afghanistan to take control back again. So the guy that was doing the question was a very smart guy. He says, will women have rights? Well, women will be able to do things, but the Sharia law will be highly enforced. Sharia law doesn't give the woman any rights whatsoever. So they asked about ISIS. Well, ISIS, they're just standing on the wayside back up. But this is a very good 20-minute documentary on an update on Afghanistan. But they're looking for, the Taliban is looking for us to leave and there will be peace. Yeah, the guy said, will there be rights for women? You didn't have a good answer for that at all. Well, Sharia law will be enforced.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah. So we have in 2009, it was Obama, and they're looking for ways to be less dependent, for Europe to be less dependent on Russia for oil. And we have the United States here that is allies with Qatar, and they want to build a pipeline and go through Syria. Syria is allied with Russia, and Russia doesn't allow them to do their pipeline. So go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's interesting when we get into Syria because it makes me think of Hillary when she had, what's his name, killed?
Gaddafi.
Yeah, and then it's Gaddafi?
Gaddafi.
What's his whole name?
I don't know.
Okay.
I only ever heard of
Gaddafi.
Okay. But everyone, you say Gaddafi and they know the
solid.
Omar
Okay.
Gaddafi.
Huh? Omar.
Oh.
Yeah, it was Omar. I didn't
Okay.
know.
Okay. And it's, yeah, so.
Muammar.
Yeah, she had him killed, but then when you have Trump, who wants to kill this one leader, what's his name? Ptolemy? What's his name?
Soleimani.
Ayatollah.
Qasim Soleimani.
Qasim Soleimani.
Soleimani.
Yeah, Soleimani, whatever. Yeah, him, you know, it's really interesting. You know, it's really interesting on that. And then you put something in the chat that he actually wanted, or did I watch this on the news, that he wanted to do other things, but he just didn't get away with it. I mean, he didn't get to do it because there was others preventing him from doing it. There was more information. Oh, it was Lester Holt, because he was saying that there was more, there was more stuff that Trump wanted to do instead of just killing him. He wanted to also destroy some other things in Iran and everything, but it just didn't happen because there was some prevention or something like that. Can't remember the whole thing. But.
So this is talking about what is going on with ISIS in Afghanistan too. Some of this I can't remember my notes on what I had up here, but Russia supplies natural gas to Europe and Ukraine. Ukraine makes the political decisions Russia doesn't like, and Russia turns off the tap. So they need to get, Obama sets out to get Europe less dependent off of Russian natural gas. And that was their plan in 2009. Syria does not let them come in. And then Iran, who is also backed by Russia, puts out another plan, and that they have to also pass through Syria, and they let them go through. Can you guys hear us? Do you hear us?
I think they can hear us because I hear someone echoing, but I don't know.
Can you hear us?
No. Well, now I can.
I'm here.
We can hear you now, but you were cut out for a few seconds.
Okay. Yeah, because every now and then I get that thing that shows that the internet's unstable. So that's just a brief thing of what is going on with Syria. And also to keep in mind that from what we all studied last week, whether you were in Cottonwood or joined with them online, that the history that Josiah Litch understood over this battle over Syria was a 10-year war, right? 1831 to 1841. Somebody say the date, isn't it 31 to 41? 31 to 41. And there were 2 years and then 6 years in between and then 2 years on the other end. So this 10-year war that involved this proxy war here going on in Syria. And here we are now. We also know from 79 to 89, you had a proxy war going on, which was referenced in the previous slide, a 10-year proxy war going on. And here we are now again from 2000, I think 2011 was Arab Spring. Is that right? Well, all the revolutions started. And so 2011 marks this proxy war that if you follow the 10-year patterns, then what's 10 years after 2011?
2021.
2021.
21.
So it's important to understand what's going on in Syria. And what happens after that. I think what we need to understand is what happens after that proxy war from history. But also what we've been understanding is with the woes when it involves Islam, that it was, and we're going to do this in March, if I can put those notes, get that study together, but if anybody hasn't watched Brother Atabo's presentations on Islam, but with the woes, what they show us is that that's what actually opens the way when the woe ended, I believe, 1449. I have the dates, but I get the events confused in my mind. There's so many events. I don't know if everybody else feels like they have a lot of things going on in their mind. But,
yeah.
So, but in 1449, that was the fall of Constantinople, right? And that's what then brought down the people from the east that were hiding in the mountains with the scriptures. And that eventually brought the light down into the west, that eventually then became the King James Version of the Bible. So, and then led into the Reformation.
Yeah, because it started with Martin Luther.
Right.
With Martin Luther, and he was in Germany, the East.
Right.
Germany in the East. So then that whole flow of things then just passed on.
And so that began the Reformation.
Yeah.
So the fall of Constantinople actually opened the way for the Reformation to begin.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you go to the second woe and you go to August 11th, 1840, what did that event cause? And we talked about that last week. It brought a great impetus to the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And neither of them were done with a battle. They were done by, I don't know if peace treaty is the right word to do. Neither one of those events happened because of a battle. But it opened up the way. So if the first woe opens up the way for the message to come to the Reformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second woe opens the way for the Millerite history. What's the third woe do?
It's going to open the way for the movement.
For the movement.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that so that was a 9/11.
Well, I think we're looking at what's coming forward.
Right.
And yeah.
It was 9/11?
I don't know. I don't remember that, so I don't want to say anything wrong. But we're looking at what's coming up. So the internal path of this movement, beginning from 2012, we're going to continue that through to 2016. So now we're looking at, we were looking at the full line of Millerite history and 1989 time at the end, but now we're going to look at just the internal thing internally from 2012 and continue to 2016. Elder Parminder has taught one of the roles of parables, or what they can do for you, is to show you information that's not easily seen. So when you can take what is visible, you can compare and contrast it with what is less visible. And if you remember the study that he did about Isaiah 46, I think it's Isaiah 46, declaring the end from the beginning, and how he says he's going to call it, is this the right study? I might have it confused. The ravenous beast. No, I'm thinking of it. I got two different stories from one study mixed up in my head. When he takes actually Christ and Barabbas, where Pilate puts the choice between Christ and Barabbas. So what is Pilate doing when he's saying choose this one or choose this one? He's giving you a compare and contrast, right? So he's putting up the Messiah. If he's putting up the true Messiah, then who must the other one be? The false Messiah. But does the Bible tell you that Barabbas is a false Messiah? But we know that he's going to be the Pope, or however that plays out. whether it be the Pope or what have you, it's going to be the counterfeit. So the counterfeit is going to be put up as the true. So you're going to all have to choose. So even though it doesn't call Barabbas the Messiah, a Messiah, we know by compare and contrast, we can balance out that scale and see that that's what he's asking you to do. Okay, so it makes what's not visible so that you can understand both. So we begin to understand the internal beginning in 2012. We found that 2012, a message came from the UK and entered the United States. The message of time was introduced, and it was introduced, from the UK and introduced to the United States in this movement. So let's see. We found that in 2012, a message came from the UK and entered the US, and that message was the message of time. And what that message was saying was that in 2014, we would experience the Sunday law, our Sunday law. 2014 is a Sunday law that was predicted in 2012. It enters the United States, and what was the response? By the movement. It was rejected. It was rejected by the leadership, by Elder Jeff and those leaders that surrounded him at that time. So we come to 2013, and what is the experience of the movement? In 2013, there's a battle developing and an internal struggle where enemies begin to show themselves. So first the message is rejected, and now you got a battle going on, and there are enemies that are beginning to now show themselves. So hopefully we're familiar with this history, and some of the discussion might be new to some of us. So for those that are new, time was first introduced 2012, and there were studies done, they were from studies done in the UK. No studies were shared with the people in the United States, with FFA, and the other leaders that were here at the time. With the leadership, and those messages were rejected. Time setting was described as fanaticism, and those studies were rejected, which is why time setting is such a new concept to many of us, but it has been a subject in the movement since 2012. So it came upon us in what, 2018? Was it 2018 when it first came upon us? So the only thing that delayed it was our experience of it. So we didn't know about it, but it had been going on since 2012. So then in 2013, and there were internal enemies. The main party was the Path of the Just. So you have the Path of the Just in 2013. These were part of the movement at the time. Path of the Just worked in step with Elder Jeff, and they were deeply opposed to the message of time setting. But by the time you get to 2013, they are not just opposing time setting. Now they're also fighting against Elder Jeff.
Okay, there's something in the chat. Brother Jonathan says, is this movement the Messiah and the papacy Barabbas? I don't know what you're referring to. I took a bathroom break, so I don't know what was said, but that's in the comments, so.
Yeah, I feel like whenever we refer to the acceptance or rejection is the message that we give them. So we're representing, but we're only representing because we have the message.
Oh.
So if they accept or reject the message. Because we have the true message of equality and everything. And he has the counterfeit message.
Interesting. That's interesting to look at it like that. The Messiah, the movement, and then Barabbas, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Was that Jonathan? Did that answer your question?
That's just how it happens in my head. I could be wrong of the actual application, but that's what it is, because we are going to give them a message, and the papacy is going to give them a counterfeit similar message.
And Pilate's going to say, choose which one.
Yeah.
Oh.
Pilate's going to say, choose which one. Whoever he is, he washed his hands, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not a good thing either.
No.
Everybody's going to be accountable. So, and those enemies first began to show themselves in 2013. So remember, these guys were working in the movement with FFA. The message of time comes in 2012. There's a battle that starts to go on in there. And so that conflict spread from 2013 into the early months of 2014. And this is when a good portion of us came in to the message. Tony, myself, Adriana.
No, I came in
a year later.
I was later, yeah.
Your mom came in like a year later, right?
not a year later. That summer of 2014. It was like 6 months later.
Okay. So this battle was actually going on when we came in, and we didn't even understand. We didn't even understand what the battle was about. We walked in, and the issue was over Joel too.
Yeah, that April, Tony and I and
You guys went and saw.
We went to the Quincy meeting, and we saw Dario Taylor, and Mark Bruce was there, and everything was, we thought it was so wonderful. And then a couple months later,
called me so excited, and I'm so glad I didn't go.
And it was like 2 months later, everything fell apart. We're like, wait, what happened? What happened? Who's Pippinger? We hadn't even heard of Jeff at that point. We only knew of the 2520 doctrine.
For Sac Central to say that Jeff Pippinger did whatever to us, we didn't even know who he was.
Isn't that crazy though, that we didn't even know who Jeff was, and we still chose the right side at that point.
That's God.
We think about that a lot.
That is so amazing.
And we prayed on that one Joel thing for a long time. We're
ready to make a mistake as well.
I know. We almost.
Wow. I want to say what I remember that day was after Dario had taught his class and we were all getting ready to leave. I didn't know him. It's the first time I met him. But I did tell him, you ever met, I don't know my exact words. So it was something like, I'll be praying for you that you don't lift yourself up because things like that can happen. And just want to let you know that you'll be in prayer. It was something like that.
Yeah.
First thing I ever talked to Dario about.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. God was working through you, Sister Tony. You didn't even know. Wow.
So it is in 2014 that they properly split.
Brother Jonathan says, now that I think of it, I think FFA is Barabbas instead of the papacy. In context, the Jews were SDA, and they will have to choose between two, this movement and Future for America, because both bring a message to them. The papacy doesn't really come onto the scene until after Sunday law.
Yeah, and I'm actually referring to beyond. I wasn't necessarily referring to now, because ultimately.
Yeah, because this wasn't about the Levites. I thought this was for Nathan and stuff.
Yeah, ultimately we're looking at the papacy and this movement. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, if you're looking at the papacy and this movement, you're looking at Christ and Satan.
Yeah.
In other words, we're climbing to the. God, this is so amazing. And I don't know how those guys can't see it when I try to describe this, but you guys will. And I've done this before. But when I'd watch movies with the kids back in the day, and I always would find the good in some, a lesson to be taught. And Jesse was always like, "Why do you always gotta do that? You ruin the movie." But I would always find the lesson to point out. And I always had this vision in my head of, and I would explain it to people, of like you've got these two sides that are fighting, and what do you see? So your weapon doesn't work, so you get a more powerful weapon. Okay, now this guy needs a more powerful weapon, and you keep climbing up to these more powerful weapons, and you get closer and closer and closer together while you continue to build up to it and get these better weapons until you implode, right? So that's literally what you're seeing happen there. We're getting closer and closer and closer, and so you're going to have the papacy, and you're going to have this movement, but eventually you get to the very top, and it's Christ and Satan.
Yeah, that sounds more like Tom and Jerry, but I don't know.
Maybe that's who I had in my head, but I don't know. Okay, so it begins in 2013, but extends into the history of 2014. And in 2014, despite the rejection of leadership and despite the work of the enemies, 2014 is a Sunday law waymark for this movement. And we find the opening up of Ezra 7:9. It's a successful waymark. It was not dependent upon the acceptance of the leadership, and it was not prevented by internal discord, but it was a successful waymark, even though how many of us even understood it? We didn't even know anything about it. It still did its work that it needed to do. So then we began to discuss the external. We went back to.
That's a good point, because it's interesting because that you guys did come in at that period, 2014, you know what I'm saying? Because did you guys hear, I know you did the video where Elder Parmenter says that he doesn't think there's anybody who came in prior to 2014 that are still in this movement. There's only a few people that have been since the beginning that are still in the movement today.
And if you think about it, why does the Spirit of Prophecy say not that God doesn't want to bring people into the church at this time?
Because
He wants to make a pure church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the movement's been going on since 1989, and then you had 9/11, why doesn't He call us in earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Same reason, probably.
Wow.
Because I wasn't even reading the Bible until 2003.
Amen. I think also it's just God knows where we stand, you know, because we're all in our each individual walk,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And many of us can only take so much. You talk about when you ask, why me? You
Right.
know, how did
Right.
I receive the call? And that at the time you came in, praise God, because you know, you never know where you would be today if you came in any sooner. Because I heard a little glimpse of it in 2011. All I heard was 2520 and them presenting something. And I was like, oh, you know, like that's a good thought that it's 144,000 that's the rock instead of Christ. And I was like so for it. But then I heard nothing else after that.
Yeah.
My life went on. I didn't hear anything until I saw that email you sent out. And, you know, it had 2520 and my mind went, what? And then, yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, we better move along because I think we have 38 slides or something like that, and we're 27. So then we began to discuss the external. We went back to 1989 and we introduced Nigel Oakes from the UK. So Nigel Oakes can actually be marked all the way back to 1989. And the company he is building begins in 1989. It's a study group called the Behavioral Dynamics Working Group. They're going to study how to manipulate human behavior. This is in the UK. Then he forms this into Behavioral Dynamics Institute in 1990. So we've got BDI then here in 1990. In 1993, it becomes SCL, Strategic Communications Laboratory, right here in 1993. And laboratory, like something scientific, but here it's to study human behavior and how to manipulate it. And the laboratory, what's the laboratory?
The world.
Yeah, the internet, the tool, they use the internet, yeah, where they work, where they do the work, but they do the work on the laboratory.
That's interesting.
On the laboratory is the internet.
The internet had to come before Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That they could not have the effect they had without the internet.
Right. So they're going to use the same techniques as Aristotle and Hitler. So when we come to this history, the mechanism that leads to Donald Trump's campaign, the tool that is picked up in this history for 2014 to 2016 is using the exact same tactics as Hitler used to also to come into power. And in our last study, we spent much of the time comparing our history to that of World War II, and Donald Trump and Hitler become the same person. And it's ugly to say it that way, but it's prophetic and accurate.
It's prophetic.
Prophetically accurate. So Nigel Oakes formed SCL. They begin to work in war zones. So here we're back to the 2012 line here, just looking at 2012. 2012, you have SCL comes from the UK into the US. So we know that he started back here with Behavioral Dynamics Working Group, worked his way forward. So 2012, you've got SCL, and it's working in war zones and in foreign elections. They mostly worked in countries that have some type of difficulty with their media, where it was in some ways restricted. Because if there was a free press, it made it much harder to manipulate the public. And they did not work in the West much in this time period. There's a list of countries where they did work. We know Kenya was a major one in 2 elections, but they begin to work in the West, and they gained the attention of the Republican Party. So this is back in 2012. They start to get the attention of the Republican Party. And in 2012, there's a U.S. election, Obama against Mitt Romney. Obama's the Democrat, a liberal, and Romney is the Republican or conservative. Obama has ideas that we would consider to be very liberal, that some people would say immoral. So by the time you get to the history of 2012, the Republican Party particularly, and stations like Fox News, are saying that Obama is at war with religion. He's waging a war against religion and Christianity, and they become much more zealous at stopping him, much more determined to change the course of government in the United States. In 2012, they failed to do that, and Obama was elected for a second term. So they say he's at war against religion, when what was he actually doing?
Freedom.
Huh?
He was giving freedom to everybody.
Yeah, freedom. He was standing for the Constitution, keeping the separation of church and state.
Separation of church and state.
Church and state. Amen.
Yep.
And can we see that going into 2014? How, what do you call it? How that does kind of mirror the building up to the Sunday law for 2014?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, because they're right here, 2012 right here.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the lines there.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that 2000.
Because you have a message of time come from the UK to the United States, and here you have SCL that comes from the UK, and now it enters into the United States. And they want to destroy it because Obama won again. And
Right.
they see Obama as immoral because he's trying to destroy Christianity. He's at war with religion. And actually all he's doing is standing for the Constitution and the separation of church and state. But the Republicans see it as a war on religion.
Mm-hmm.
So we read the quotes about Alexander Nix, the CEO. You have a comment? Make it quicker than that. We're running out of time.
Never mind. Yeah, made me think of commercial.
We read the quotes of Alexander Nix, the CEO, where he said that this victory for Obama in 2012 was the catalyst that allowed them to enter into the American market. So SCL enters the USA from where? From the UK in 2012. And who is government? Who's in the government? That was Obama. He's just been reelected. Obama and his associates, the Democrats. Let's remember in 2001, in the Patriot Act, we haven't discussed the Patriot Act in a great detail, but it's something we've already been aware of. In 2001, as a response to 9/11, George Bush brings in the Patriot Act 45 days after 9/11. And this was a restriction of civil liberty. It started on what they used the Patriot Act to do, was to take the private information of American people and place it in massive databases. Particularly, what they were collecting was phone records and everything done over the internet. So all the information that is put out from 1989, from 2001, the American government begins to collect and to store. So that's just a little blurb there on SCL that I put in there. You can read that we want to try to get through these. So if they ever feel the need to find information about you, they can go to those records and find out who you called and who you emailed. Everything you have ever written on social media, every website you visited, all in a massive government database. And to do that is a clear violation of the Constitution. Who was fighting that in 2001? Not everyone. But in 2001 to 2014, there's an ongoing war that sometimes dies down and sometimes rises up, but it's ongoing struggle in the United States government over the Patriot Act. It's primarily the Democrats who are opposing it from the beginning. And this is George Bush, and he is a Republican, and his party was behind him. So George Bush is the one that puts it into place. And just some info on the Patriot Act. We're not going to read it to save some time here. But everybody, I think, is pretty familiar with the Patriot Act. But if you need, go back to the slide on your own if you want and check it out. But we come down to this history, and there's a Democrat, this history here in 2012, in this period of time here, there's a Democrat, and they are, for the most part, are opposed to the Patriot Act. Before Obama became involved in politics, what was his career? And I know there was an argument over this and discussion about whether or not, because she claimed that he was a constitutional lawyer. And you can look up and you do find some things that link him to. He understands the Constitution. So you can look that up as well. There's information on various websites. Google it to find out your information, to do your own research on this. But he knows the document well. And I will make a note or make a point or say this, that I started reading A Very Stable Genius last week. And what I read a couple of days ago, I had not ever heard this part before, but this reporter, and I can't remember who the reporter was. Oh, I should remember this. Sorry, it wasn't a reporter. It was Nancy Pelosi's daughter. was doing a documentary for HBO. Okay. The details are sketchy, but I'll try to remember it. She's doing a documentary on presidents. And so she's interviewing various presidents and vice presidents from, I think it said the last 5 or so. I remember the live probably. I don't remember the details on it. But she goes to the White House and she explains the scene that takes place and how Trump had so much trouble reading the Constitution, his portion that he was supposed to read, which, if I remember right, I'll ask you guys, what portion do you think that was his to read?
The presidency.
His executive power.
Yeah,
that
the
he has the
executive
right
power,
to do
yeah.
anything. That happened to be, if I remember right, that happened to be the portion he was to read.
Wow.
But she talked about how he kept fumbling it, and that, like most people, if I know myself, if I fumble in what I'm reading, I don't turn around and say, Victoria, why'd you make me do that? Right? But she says that that's basically what he does. He blames this person in the room for making noise, this shuffling of papers. They're distracting me. They're this, they're that. And he could not get through. And then he finally eventually does read it. And so they talk about how he's never even, and she compares, or the writer, the writer actually compares some of the others that were interviewed that had such a good understanding of it that they could almost recite it. And I think she said Romney. I don't remember if it was Romney, but one of the other, I don't remember who it was. Somebody, she said, actually had it memorized, sections of it memorized. Another one had all of it memorized.
It's saying that he wanted the power but not the responsibility, and that's just like Satan. You know what I'm saying? If you want to be president, you would have Article 2 memorized in your head. Right. It would be something that you know your responsibility for. Right. Something that you know what you're getting yourself into. He had his own agenda. Yes, he had his own agenda. He didn't care about what the rules were for him to be president. All he wanted was to be president and the power of being president. Yeah.
So let's see, before we had Obama, let's see, he was a constitutional lawyer. He knows that document well. And whatever failings he may have had, he knew what the Constitution said. So you do not have someone in power who is going to come to the Sunday law and violate that Constitution. So we're saying that Obama was not going to be the one that's going to bring Sunday law in. So because it would be a violation of the Constitution. So there's an issue with this company. Who are they going to work through? They come from the UK into the United States and they can access the government. Can they access the government? No, they cannot work. So SCL cannot work through the government.
So 2019, he violated the Constitution with what he did with Ukraine. That's why he's getting impeached. Right?
Oh, thank you.
Violated the Constitution.
That's why you impeach someone.
Right.
Because they violated.
I'm looking at Ukraine.
Is this mine? Okay, thank you.
From Ukraine.
Yeah, Zelensky. He told them to investigate the Bidens.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Because that was unconstitutional for gain for himself.
Yeah, for gain for himself. Okay.
Yeah, because
I have to separate the thoughts sometimes in my head because they're all over.
But Parminder said 2019 was another Sunday law, and it's proof that it's not what we thought it was going to be. It's the same thing, a violation. It was a violation of the Constitution.
So it wasn't going to happen through Obama as well. So they cannot work through Obama, the president. They cannot work with his associates, the Democrats, because they stand for the Constitution and the separation of church and state. Instead, they begin to work with the Republican Party. And here's a list of key names that we need to look at when you have time. The key names were Nigel Oakes, Steve Bannon, Christopher Wiley, and Alexander Nix. Nigel Oakes began this process perhaps more than the others. In 2013, there's a problem. The Patriot Act was introduced in 2001, but there's someone working within the United States Defense who begins to turn against his government, and that was Snowden. He is opposing two things. First, the Patriot Act, which is a violation of the Constitution, but now he's not just opposing the Patriot Act, now he's opposing the government, his leadership. So you have the path of the just on the internal here of the movement that begins to fight the message of time and the leadership. In 2013, you have a government contractor from within their own agencies who begins to oppose the Patriot Act, government surveillance in general. What he is opposing is government surveillance and control. And also, in this action, he is attacking the government. In 2013, Edward Snowden took a great deal of those government secret files, and he created the largest leak known in history.
Wow.
Beginning in 2013, extending into around the middle of June 2014, he's releasing government secrets, a direct attack on the government to such an extent that by 2014 and 2015, the FBI and the NSA are facing lawsuits. And it was ruled that what they had done under the Patriot Act was illegal and a violation of the Constitution.
Good job, Snowden. Yeah, but Sister Ali has an interesting question. She says, so do the Sunday law begin at 2014 and just progresses? I'm wondering this because Adriana just said that Parmenter said there was another Sunday law in 2019. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
each one of them represents a violation of the Constitution, I think is the point she was making.
So it gets progressively worse, this violation, because the Sunday law, we have progression and repeat and enlarge. So every single waymark, if it's a repeat, it's going to be a violation of the Constitution. But if it's progression, it's going to be an increase in like situation of the violation of the Constitution. 2014, you want to bypass the right of the American people to vote by their conscience. You want to mess with their conscience. 2019, you again with voting issue, you want to bypass the American people and their constitutional right to vote and get gain for yourself by meddling in foreign affairs. You know what I mean? So it's a violation.
What about 2016 when Russia interfered with the election then because it bypassed all the people? Trump didn't win by popular vote. It was Hillary that won by popular vote, but had Russia not interfered, Hillary would have won completely.
But that started in 2014. Cambridge Analytica and Russia stuff, because you had Gaddafi, right, happen, and Putin was angry at Hillary for that, and so his intention to go against her didn't start in 2016. It started way earlier. Because you had, it was the Arab Spring was in 2011. It was shortly after that Gaddafi died. So it was, and the Putin and Russia had been messing with in the deep web. They've been putting messages out before the election, like years before the election. It wasn't like they just started 2016.
Right.
They've been working on different chat groups with bots and everything.
So this work of Snowden changed the internet as we know it. The report by Robert Mueller, I think I spelled that wrong, about Russian interference in the investigation of Trump's team was released in March of 2019. And in that report, what did Robert Mueller complain of? He said he could not investigate everything because the information that he wanted to access was encrypted, which means he can no longer access. So when information is encrypted, you'd need someone who knows more information about computers than he did. So, but when information is encrypted, it's very difficult to access it. The reason why encryption was introduced, particularly into messaging services such as WhatsApp, was not to protect us from foreign actors or criminals. All of the encryption was introduced in the history of 2013 was to hide information from the American government. Encryption was not introduced to protect from criminals, but as a direct result of Edward Snowden to hide the information from the American government. And it has completely changed even down into our history, where Robert Mueller and the Russian investigation is finding that a roadblock. So it limited them being able to, it gave us avenues to be able to communicate without them being able to access it. But if I understand correctly, WhatsApp is also compromised, or however you want to put that now too. So
it is, because it's by Facebook company. I saw that, right. I was like, dang, all my information is on there. Sure. Now they only have my information there.
So this was the largest leak of information known in history, and it created quite a struggle within the United States government. A war inside the United States government about what to do with this Patriot Act, because Obama is opposing it, the Democrats are opposing it, And even the Republicans who intentionally wrote the Patriot Act, the Republican who intentionally wrote the Patriot Act is fighting against it. And that's what happens over the course of 2014. So if we're going to see a violation of liberty, it's not going to come from the government. 2014, the government fighting the Patriot Act, they already have, and Obama is fighting as hard as he can in 2014 to have the Patriot Act amended, back into line with the Constitution. He fails in that effort because of the opposition of the Republican Party. And in 2015, the Patriot Act is repealed and no longer exists, and now we're under the Freedom Act. It's a lot like the Patriot Act, but there are differences, a few differences, which makes it harder for the government to access information.
Can I say something right there? So when we're talking about the Patriot Act and the Freedom Act, because I went into that and I, do study of the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting because, oh my God, so it was about to end in Obama's term, right? Is that what it was?
So.
And then he wanted to renew it? Is that what I'm understanding? Or what is didn't he want to renew that?
He was against it.
He was against it. But who issued in the Freedom Act? It was the Republicans or was it him?
It was him.
Exactly.
But it was supposed to be a trimmed down version of
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just trying to understand.
His generals and his officers, the military and the different political people around him talked him into it because they're like, no, look at how many arrests we were able to make, how many bad people we were able to put away. We need a version of this Patriot Act so that we can keep doing what we're doing and keep putting away the people that, we need information on.
Oh, good, Obama, then. I can see, right.
He was fighting, but they talked him into it.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so just a quick, so we have 2012 on the internal line, 2012 on the external line. You have a message of time that comes from the UK to the United States, it's rejected. 2012, you have SCL that comes from the UK, comes to the United States, that is now going to start working with the Republican Party. 2013, you have internal enemies, and there's a split that comes after this. 2013, you also have enemies in an enemy of the United States, which he is pegged as an enemy, but I think we can see that he wasn't an enemy.
Mm-hmm, I know.
That he was working in, and his book is, I haven't read that one, I gave it to my son, but I started reading it and I already made some points about that, but he has an interesting background.
Who?
Snowden.
Oh, Snowden.
Snowden.
Okay.
That he can be traced back to, his mother can be traced back directly to the Mayflower. And that, and how they actually, 100 years before abolition came in, they actually set their slaves free. So they've got some righteousness going on in their life, in their history, in their life. Okay, so that's the line that he comes from. Okay.
That's interesting.
So if we're going to see a violation of liberty, it's not going to come from the government. 2014, the government is fighting the Patriot Act that they already have, and Obama is fighting as hard as he can in 2014 to have the Patriot Act amended and come back into line with the Constitution. So I think we finished that one already. So it's a lot like the Patriot Act. Okay, we did that. So this is what is visibly happening, but under the surface, there is the work of the Republican Party and this SCL elections. Particularly in 2013, SCL meets two people, Christopher Wiley and Steve Bannon, become involved in their work, especially noting Steve Bannon, who successfully brings this tool to the attention of some Republican donors like Mercer, Robert Mercer, and they create the company Cambridge Analytica. And this is the company that is used and becomes the tool of the Republican Party to help elect Donald Trump. And in 2014, they do their work. It was a lot like what was done under the Patriot Act, but now it is not just collected and stored. Now they're using everything they learned from the studies they've done in 1989, and they use that information. So now we have Cambridge Analytica and Steve Bannon involved, and this is now the tool that they're going to use to get Donald Trump elected. So in 2014, they took the personal information and data of tens of millions of Americans. They have said over 100 million, but the exact number is not known, around 80 to 90 million maybe. They formed that information into algorithms, and then they began to manipulate public opinion all as a buildup of preparations for the 2016 election. They start creating phrases in 2014 designed to test the American public and see what kind of subject material creates an emotional response. Some of the phrases they begin to say, build the wall. They send that out onto the internet, photos of immigrants, photos of walls, and they're testing the American public to see what types of messages would appeal to certain groups of people that they can they can use in the 2016 election. So this is how he reached his base and created his base. So in this history, you have two layers. You have an internal and an external, but in the external, you have two layers. The government that is visible, but then you also have the work of the Republican Party and the development of Cambridge Analytica. So we'll summarize. In 2012, a message comes from the UK to the United States, and it's the message of time. It's rejected by the leadership, Elder Jeff, and those closely connected with him. In 2012, a company enters into the United States from the UK. It is directly opposed to Obama and the Democrats. The two are not able to be in agreement. They cannot work through the government. In 2013, you have the work of the enemies, Path of the Just, internal to the movement beginning to fight with the leadership. They have also opposed the message of time. In 2013, externally, you have the work of Edward Snowden, the largest leak of government data in history. He's fighting against the government surveillance, but the Patriot Act in particular, and he's fighting against the government. In 2014, internally, despite the rejection of leadership, the Sunday law for this movement and light has opened up on Ezra 7:9. In 2014, externally, it cannot go through the government. This Sunday law cannot be passed by the government of the United States, but it has to come from another party. Beginning from the UK, they do a work under Cambridge Analytica, and this work, which is direct violation of the Constitution, is the tool developed for Trump's campaign. It begins in 2014 and then continues to be developed into the election of 2016. 2014 is also the beginning of the message, the beginning of the work known as the loud cry. Some people are saying, this was kind of a disclaimer, so I kind of left it the way she said it. Some people are saying or putting into public record that there's mistakes built into this model, and they're saying it is incorrect and that there's mistakes, because what is being suggested is that Elder Tess placed the rejection of the leadership in 2013. And I know that I'm speaking to the camera as much as to all of you. I'm not sure who is watching, but I want to make it clear. I have never believed that. Therefore, I'm fairly convinced I have never taught that. The rejection of the leadership was 2012, when the message entered the United States. It did not lay dormant for a period of time. It was not accepted and then rejected. It was rejected from the moment it entered. And I have always placed that entering in 2012. We come to the external, and 2012 is the election of Obama and the Democrats, who had a majority in that house. So while I'm not placing the rejection of that message in 2013, I'm placing it in 2012, which is what I've done from the beginning. I'm not sure why people have twisted that. Perhaps they have misunderstood the board work. I have highlighted 2013 because where you see the work of the enemies, you also know that the government itself is opposed. But the message actually began in 2012, and it was rejected immediately. So I could see Obama defending the Constitution in 2013 and opposed to the Sunday law, but he didn't. But he did that in 2008, 2009, 2011. He did that all through this history, just the way time was never accepted in 2012 or 2013 or back in the history prior to this board work. Wrong spelling, sorry. It's not something you just need to pin to a date, but it was the whole history. So I have never taught or ever believed that the rejection of the leadership was in 2013. The rejection was 2012. This is where it was rejected. And we should know that, not because it's what I said, but because that is what the parable teaches, that it's this message it's SCL that comes from the UK to the United States in 2012. So even if I had said 2013, the mistake would have been mine, not the message. The parable is clear. It marks 2012. What we mark in 2013 is the work of the enemies, Path of the Just and Edward Snowden. We're also noting in 2013, the leadership was still not in agreement, just like it was for the history prior in the history in the future. So I want to be correct. I want to correct that misunderstanding. The rejection of the leadership is in 2012.
Wait, can I say something?
Mhm.
Because she says is the work of the enemies, comma, Path of the Just and Edward Snowden. But Edward Snowden wasn't an enemy, was he?
He was to Obama.
Oh.
It's flip-flop. So externally, Obama's the good guy. Edward Snowden, well,
I thought he was he's the one who released the information to let people know that their data was being collected by the
But
government.
the United States in general saw that as an enemy of the United States.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So, but that was a good act, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
but
just
it
confused.
looked like treason.
Yeah.
So let's see. So the rejection of leadership was in 2012. That's what has always been taught. But despite anything I have to say, that's what the parable teaches, because you have 2012 with SCL coming in from the UK to the United States. The parable is showing you. 2012 is the rejection. 2013, the work of the enemies. 2014, a successful waymark. Despite those difficulties that the message had to overcome, it is the waymark of Sunday for this movement. And that was that. So, phew. That was a big one. No, that's okay, I'll wait. Okay, so any questions or comments? Did everybody understand and follow what the point she was making there? Because I remember watching these presentations when they were first coming up. And there was something that I thought as well initially that I had twisted background in my head. I had to go back and rewatch because for my own self, I mean, sometimes we're taking in so much information, the information blurs in my head. And so I actually thought she was looking at 2013 and I wasn't seeing how 2012 and 2013 were lining up. Mm-hmm. But she shows that, and we all know this, even without her saying it, we know it because even Elder Jeff told us back in Rescue, right? When I think it was in Rescue when he first brought it up that there was a message about time in 2012, and we're all like, what? We had no idea. But he actually specified it was 2012, if I remember right. So we were kind of getting a little glimpse of something had happened that was before, and that was actually the April 2018, because then it was June or July, whenever the Germany meetings were, where Parmenter does the study on time. So somehow the Lord saw fit that he would give us a heads up in
God
April.
is amazing, I tell you.
that there was this that went on back in 2012. Mm-hmm. And he stood there, and if I remember right, that said that it was fanaticism. And,
wow.
But he was pointing out, the reason he was showing us that is because he was talking about the 126 and then the 151.
Yeah, I think it's
but how can
with 126.
Yeah.
But how can you teach on the 126 and the 151 without time?
I know. And that's what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
So I praise God that I'm even still here, because when I think about the things that have passed by me, and I'm still sitting here, there is only one reason. It's by God's grace that he continues to help us to stay on that narrow path until it's only Christ and Satan, and we're over on the side of Christ.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, who would like to close in prayer and pray the blessing? Oh, Brother Henry's here. Maybe he would. And pray for the food as well.
Okay. Dear precious Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for the study that we have had, and for seeing the different parallels and getting a better understanding of things. We do pray, Lord, that you will continue to lead and guide us throughout this Sabbath day, and that the blessings of heaven will be continually poured out. And Lord, we also pray for blessing upon the food that is to be partaken of, and that you will continue to nourish and strengthen our body physically as well as spiritually. And we thank you for hearing and answering our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.